Okay, so my guest today, my uh, my first guest is Semahegn Adugna, founder of Arkias Digital, a U.S. registered company that specializes in AI systems and workflow automation. He's been a colleague of mine before. We've bounced ideas off each other over the years, and makes sense that you're the first guest on the podcast. Glad to have you.
Yeah, glad to be here as your first guest. So I think you introduced well. So thank you for that. So yeah, let's start.
Let's start. So, I think what I've been noticing lately is that automation projects are like super hard to scope. They just balloon in size and they just turn out into like nightmares pretty much sometimes. And I've had a few of these nightmare projects. Have you had any? Like, what's your experience been like?
Just just to point out a few patterns that can be categorized as nightmarish projects. For example, um, a client may not explain to you what they really want. Well, for example, the business process that they are trying to automate mm, may not have a clear structural business process. For example, a business may say, like, we want to automate customer requests. That's when you look deeper into the the customer request may come from different channels. For example, it may come from emails, WhatsApp, or staff members. So there isn't really a structured business process. So the real problem may not be the technical or really an automation. So the problem may be an operational. So if you automate these kinds of problems too early, so they just mess up the whole business. So before building anything, I will usually try to map the workflow, where the request come from, what kind of data the request needs, so what information are needed. So the lesson is, so automation should simplify an existing already structured business workflow rather than to hide a broken business workflow. That's how I see a nightmarish automation. Oh,
I think you're correct. I think a lot of clients say just hear the word AI and they want to apply AI to their businesses and
yeah,
they just think it will do the work for them and make them the money and they just don't want to really think about how exactly it would be doing the work. So these kinds of situations are like very problematic. And one of the things I have kind of got into is like the only way to avoid these kind of like bad ideas, bad projects is to just flag them early. And so like setting expectations with the client and then because like once the project is started and has gotten to a certain stage, it's very difficult to like kind of back off and like promise or deliver something different. So you did mention a few signs for what constitutes um a bad project, but how do you spot the signs very early on? So like you'd say, okay, this is not a very structured process. Make it like um, give me like a structured business workflow, and then any other signs that you see from
yeah.
clients that yeah.
There are a few points that you could see before you flag a project as a bad one, or even the idea as a bad one. So, the first thing is if the client doesn't explain what the actual current process is current. So,
Yeah.
if they cannot explain how the work happens today, so it's very hard to automate it properly. The second warning sign, I would say, um, for example, just like as you mentioned earlier, so from the client may see it from the marketing perspective, they just need an AI name in their projects. So an AI
Yeah.
somewhere in the system. So yeah, so the better requirement would be like we need 10 hours. every week doing we spend 10 hours doing this every week, so we need to reduce that. So that kind of request or requirement would be a good one, but just a generic, we need an AI system, so you cannot work with that. So, and last thing I will point out, if there is no clear owner, for example, that auto
Mm, mm,
process, yeah, could be
yeah,
on the different departments. So there needs to be a back and forth who is a department that you're working with, that they should validate how the automation is actually improving. So there needs to be a back and forth. So you need to clearly know who the owner is. That's
yeah.
how I would
I
usually about my ideas.
I think the last point is like a very good one where there's somebody in a different department or like somebody who's very high up, like maybe it's someone in it's like someone who's an executive who thinks this department needs AI and they kind of bring it about and then all of a sudden that department is not very enthusiastic about the project and they just like kind of don't give very good feedback. That's been a problem for me as well. So I think that's a very good point that you mentioned. And now moving away from the bad projects, what kind of projects do you think are good ideas or like good projects? What are like some good applications of automation and AI and yeah, which projects would deliver a good ROI for the client and also for the automator or whoever the third party is actually implementing these systems? What kind of scenario would be the easiest?
Yeah. So um, this one is also comes from the client side as well. So, for example, if the client knows where the business value is, for example, they some clients may say we need an AI chatbot or an AI customer support for our yeah, but um, that's that business really needs, for example, a follow-up system or a follow-up automation or to handle customer requests early. So if the client knows what the business value is, that's usually where the clients make it so the highest ROI when they implement. Also, if the clients understands about, for example, automation cannot be only um, connecting phones apps together or or simply adding AI to the system, but actually um, automating an existing repetitive and time-consuming business operation outsource. So the clients understand that, usually that project will be are on a good salt. So yeah,
I
it's
think yeah, one of the things I noticed is it makes sense to always go for more standard kind of implementations, like you said, like follow-up systems or like chatbots. Like these are very well-known systems. However, like if every system that's being built is like very novel and new and like there isn't like a good precedent for it and it's always like connecting like this one different thing with this other different thing with this fourth different thing like right over there and there's supposed to be like some kind of interplay or process and you're like supposed to do that data, it might look great in a demo but in production like a lot of like the actual requests fail, it stops being reliable, and like that becomes a real issue. So like there's standard products or like standard automations that or like standard workflows that these businesses can use and kind of like having them bite into it there. And like if they after like working with the standard automation, they slowly want to expand, I think that's like usually the right approach, like some kind of like document processing chatbots, like you said, like these are like very standard things that need to be implemented and are actually useful and tried and true. Like usually it's not a good idea to go for like very new approaches when integrating AI, especially for a company that's doing it like as a first project. And the next thing I wanted to ask you about is AI is like full of hype cycles. and sorry, and it's full of hype cycles, like a lot of things like over the past 3 years. Like, how many times did you think you're gonna lose your jobs online? Like quite a few times, I imagine, like the way
Yeah.
they
Yes.
the way they kept you know. And so right now, what do you think is the most overhyped automation or like AI tool? And which one do you think is the most underrated?
Mm. It's a difficult question, to be honest. But I would not to crack some specific tool, but the most overhyped category, I would say, are AI agent tools. So uh, it's not because of their capabilities. So, so I would say they're very good at what they can accomplish. So in part, they will help you, but their markets it like as if they can run an entire business by themselves. So uh, the reality is agents are only useful when the workflow is well designed. So there is there needs to be always a human around it. So yeah, without the foundation, the AI agents can become, let's say, unpredictable. Mm, when what's underrated or you asked me underrated like that's yeah. So the basic ones like forms, proper and data ways, the CRM setup, webhooks, the logs. So also those are wrong.
Yeah, I think for me, the one that would be underrating is like those meeting note takers. So you join like a Google Meet or a Zoom meeting, and you kind of like have like an
Those
AI
are
join up, and then by the end of the meeting, you get like an email that says, "This is what happened in the meeting. This is all the transcript." That's like the the greatest thing that came out of AI for him, because now you just don't even have to, like, nothing is really lost in terms of context. With like you discuss anything with anybody and it's like on record no matter what, and it's very easy to query and it's very easy to get back to, and like projects can effectively be scoped in a meeting because like nobody has to write anything down, and by the end of it you could just aggregate all the info that's been shared and then have like maybe a second meeting or a second thread where you kind of finalize the concepts. And brainstorming is now a lot easier than it was before, I imagine, just because of these note takers. And I think one of the most underrated uses, I believe. And then finally, where do you think all this is heading? 2, 5, 10 years down the line? What kind of impact will AI and automation have? And in particular, for small businesses, what can they do now that they'll be able to do then in the future?
that's a difficult answer. Well, that's a difficult question, and so
We ask
uh,
hard questions
yeah,
on this
obviously,
podcast.
I've been a victim.
First victim.
That's
Okay.
it. Yeah, where can we see or when can this all go in a few years? So, uh, let me start from the small business owner side. So they will get a capability. So um, usually it will running a business will require a lot of skills. So usually people have different skill sets to handle those. So now the AI can give them a capability to do what you can get by the traditional, for example, a full engineering team. So that can be yeah replaced, and also uh, for example, usually a small business owner asks questions like, which customer needs a follow up this week, or what are the biggest support issues in this week, and for example, invoices. So which invoices are overdue, things like that. So they will usually get answers very quickly when they employ AI tools or when they implement automation in their system. And also, uh, I don't think everything is going to be fully autonomous. in the future, humans still needs to be in control, in review. For example, uh, so things like that involve money, for example. So yeah, money is the let's say an heir to the business, like right. So
Yeah,
these kinds
cash
of
flow is very it's the main
yeah,
thing. Yeah,
yeah. So these kinds of things really needs humans in control. So the future uh, is not as what they say is the AI replacing their people, but small business becoming more powerful and more profitable. So
yeah.
that's how I
I
see
think
it. Few years.
yeah, I agree with you on this. I think for like the future, I imagine the biggest challenge would be, you know, being reliable, being trustworthy. Because even now, like you let an AI run your business, you just keep going down threads and you just cannot trust the system. And so the thing that most businesses would probably need to focus on, like you don't need to hire a full engineering team, but you need to be very like any promises you make to clients or like customers, you need to like be able to deliver on. And AI as it is now would always is not very good at like delivering on promises. Like you can't like if an AI tells me something, I can't go to you and tell you what the AI told me. And I think businesses will need to maintain that reliability and that trust with their customers. And I think that's where like these small to medium sized businesses need what they need to focus on, like 2, 5, even 10 years down the line. I think AI would not be able to replace that. And I think this concludes our time. Semahegn, it was like amazing to have you here. Um, been very insightful as always. And that concludes the first episode of the podcast.